Do you ever wish someone would draw you a map and give you the directions to the career of your dreams? If so, consider this podcast your GPS to a career where you feel strong, fulfilled, and passionate about your work, day in and day out. On this show, I'm sharing the tools to help you advocate for your strengths, discover your passions, and learn from folks who transform their careers for the better. My name is Joyel Crawford, your fairy god mentor. And with 18 years of experience in HR at a Fortune 50 company and 20 years of coaching and mentoring top leaders, I am thrilled to be your guide on this career journey. Let's get started. Welcome to Career View Mirror. I am your host, Joyel Crawford, your fairy god mentor, and today we have the privilege of chatting with an incredible career strategist, author, founder of Fire Memos, Octavia Goredema. Octavia is on a mission to empower employees to accelerate their careers and turn their invisible work into a powerful archive of accomplishments. She's also the author of Prep, Push, Pivot, Essential Career Strategies for Underrepresented Women, and a trailblazer in career coaching and AI-powered innovation. Octavia, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, Joyel, I am so excited to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. So I have the chilies because Octavia and I met 2022. So
Yes.
2 years ago at the Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit. We were on a book panel and we talked about our books, and just life kind of took off for both of us. She's already a rock star. So I lovingly call her Hollywood. And because she lives in the California area, I feel like you're in the LA area, aren't you, Octavia?
Yes, that's exactly right. Exactly right. And meeting you, oh my goodness, was such a highlight of what was already an incredible weekend in Las Vegas with the Black Enterprise team. Isn't it so funny sometimes when work, because that's what we were there for work reasons, but it throws up sometimes such incredible opportunities, and I feel so honored to have you as a friend.
Oh, ditto, sis, ditto. I am so excited about talking about your career journey because I know bits and pieces, but I'd love for our audience to know more about it because it's truly inspiring. And I would love for you to share your experience or the moment that ignited the passion for helping employees, especially underrepresented women, navigate their careers, especially when it comes to asking for promotions or overcoming the pushback in the workplace. Can you share a little bit more about that watershed moment or moments that kind of pushed you into this direction?
Thank you. That's such a beautiful question. And I've never, I guess, really reflected on what that one thing was. I think it was probably a culmination of things. For anyone listening or watching, you can probably hear I'm from England, but now America is my home. And I started my career 2 decades ago after I graduated with a politics and history degree. And I moved from my university town to London. And at that time, making that move felt monumental. If you'd have told me I'd then be packing 2 suitcases and moving to another country a few years later, I wouldn't have believed it, because at that moment, that was just monumental for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had a job, Joyel. I started delivering papers when I was 12 years old. I was a babysitter. I then worked in retail while I was, through school. I've always worked, but it was that first career step after I graduated. And I think finding myself in an office environment, I built a career in communications before the work that I do now. And it was such an eye-opener for me in all the ways, and what I increasingly saw over time was not only was I often the only Black woman in a meeting, I was maybe the only Black woman often on a team, sometimes the only Black woman in the building. And what I'd always been raised, and I think so many of us have been raised, that we have to work twice as hard. That was just always the expectation that
Yeah.
I had.
Same,
And I
same.
would, do my best to do that. Some things were easier than others, some things were harder than others, but I always felt I would always have to be polite, ready, on time, put together, all those things. But I think what I started to see after many years, especially looking alongside at friends and peers who looked like me, was that you can do all the things, but sometimes it's not enough. And you only see it when you start to see others advancing faster than you.
Yes.
When you start to see others doing more, when you start to hear accidentally that others are earning that and you're earning this, when you start to ask the things that you feel make sense and you don't get them, or you get them and then you're not respected the same way that someone else is.
Mm-hmm.
The tipping point there were multiple moments where there have been moments in my career where things shifted, whether it was what felt like a big shift, like finishing college and starting that first job, or then packing my suitcases and coming to the United States, or then getting the promotions and leading teams and all the things that happen over your career arc. But I think it was having my eyes wide opened about what it takes to dream bigger and realizing that that actually starts with you. And that we have to advocate for ourselves in those in-between moments when we're not quite where we want to be yet. That's actually when it matters the most.
And that's where we become like twins with our messages about self-advocacy. I mean, that's like such a rich background to knowing it's that in-between part. It's not getting the big part, the big next big step. It's the in-between, that messy middle, as I like to call it. That's what really ignited your passion to work in this field. That's fantastic. I mean, did you set out to be, a career expert? You know what I mean? Like,
no,
is that
but I've always been curious about what it takes to do your best work, whatever you define that to be. I've just always been curious about that. I've always been motivated and inspired by when I see people. I guess now I would call it in a state of flow. I didn't have that language when I was younger, but my eyes would just be wide when I'd see people doing cool things that they were really enjoying. And I'd get inspired by that, whether that's like someone that's in a completely different field, like an athlete, or someone that's working on a team alongside me that I see is just killing it and just doing a really great job. I just love to see that. And so I've always had this curiosity. So I always loved asking questions and observing and learning and sharing. So that was innately within me. I never dreamed I would become a coach. It was only after I was coached myself that I started to connect dots between the things that motivated and inspired me. And then when I also started to see what that impact can be when you start to self-reflect and then also really play to your strengths and look at how you can harness those things. I did always want to be an author. That was something I did.
Okay. All right. That was always on the list.
That was always on the list. I didn't always believe I would do it, but it was always on the list. So I've had a career that's had like so many different journeys, like within one. I've done so many things, but I feel the common thread that has bound everything from when I was working like through school and then graduating and then starting my career, moving overseas, becoming a founder, all the things that I now do now, that common thread is really about enabling others to do their best work. And how can I, either as a leader myself or as a manager of people, or just me as an individual, how can I contribute to that? How do I do that? How can we help one another on those journeys? Because even when we're not where we want to be yet, there's always going to be someone who's looking at something you've already done.
Yes.
And be like, how did you do that?
I want to get there.
I want to do that. I wish I could have. right? Whether that's the school you went to
Mhm.
or a job that you did in the past that perhaps wasn't as great as it looks, but to someone else looks amazing. There's so much that we can do to pay it forward even as we're building.
Well, speaking of that, and this is not even, like the way it is, but the way that it's naturally going is the next step of what you're building. Tell us a little bit more about Fire Memos.
Oh my gosh. So now, and as I've mentioned, I've done a lot of things, but my latest career step, which I'm incredibly excited by, is being the founder of Fire Memos. We're a platform that enables employees to record and recognize their achievements at work and also have a conversation within our platform using AI, which coaches you
Mhm.
around your progress. And I decided to build this because I realized I've been working as a coach over the past, I don't know, 6, 7 years. And,
Mhm.
I've had the privilege of coming into some really incredible workplaces. A lot of companies bring me in to support their people, and it's fantastic. But coaching is expensive, and often there's a time frame on it. You might be able to work with someone for a couple of months or 6 months or maybe even a year, or you might lead a group session or programs that last for a while, but then budgets can't last forever. And
Mhm.
also, especially as organizations are growing, it can be hard often to provide support to every single person who could benefit. You have to choose the
Mhm.
person that raised their hand or, whatever markers you have. And I wanted to make access to information that can support you on your career journey just much more accessible. And my first example of doing that was writing a book. And that was great. It was actually,
Mhm.
okay, I can condense what I've learned, how I've helped others into 225 pages. And that book
Mhm.
can be available in bookstores and libraries, and you can listen to it. But I also realized that with software, there's an opportunity to actually reach and connect and support people on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And so I had this idea, and then I just decided last year, okay, I have to do this. And to do this right, I have to assemble the team that can work with me to do this because I know the vision and I know the impact and I know what it should feel like, but I need a team to build that
Yeah.
with me. And to do that, I'm going to need money. And so,
Yeah.
okay, so I need some investors. And so literally it was like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. Okay, what pieces do I need? And I was like, well, the only way to do this is just to start assembling the pieces. And so that's what I did. And so secured our first investor, which is Techstars, the team at Techstars, phenomenal team. They invested in Fire Memos. We used that investment to build out the first version of our product.
Mhm.
It's now in what's called private beta, which means that we're inviting organizations to use it, and then we're adding to it based on how they're using it. And then we'll be making it available to the public. And so it's been such an incredible journey. And the purpose of Fire Memos is that it's a dedicated space for you to go to. No one else on your team will see what you enter, even though your employer will purchase a subscription for you. And you can start to record and remember the things that matter at work, the things that you might not have time to talk about in every
Mhm.
single one-on-one you have, but that
Mhm.
you need to remember, and that you can also have a conversation around within our platform using our AI coach has been trained on how I coach someone around talking about your progress, so that you've got a space where you can have that reflection and start to self-validate what you're doing before you have your next one-on-one or team meeting or performance review.
It's fantastic. I am a beta tester. I am one of the people in the beta test. And folks, it is it's your dig folder. So, I talk about in my book, Show Your Ask, about a dig folder, which is a damn I'm good folder. And this is like dig folder on steroids. Like it is the coolest thing to go in there, and it'll remind you, it's like, okay, celebrate your wins. What did you do? And it is a really cool tool to help you continue to stay on track, stay on task, and meet your goals, reach your goals, and celebrate your goals. And I think that that's one piece that we tend to lose sight of in celebration, when we're trucking through and trying to get to our career lattice. It's not even a ladder anymore. It's a lattice. But wherever we're trying to get to in our careers, we forget that celebration. I love that part of the tool.
And it's so true, Joyel, because often we wait for external recognition also of things that we've done. And the external recognition is important. Like we do want to have our manager recognize what we do. We do want to get the job or get the promotion or land the project or complete the presentation and get the kudos. But there's so much that goes into each step that you make that it's really important to recognize. And, I've been using an analog system myself and guiding people that I'd coached to do this. And you can do this with a journal. You could do this with a spreadsheet. There are lots of ways that you can do it if you don't have access to software. But it's really important to just have that regular habit of doing this, especially when you feel like you're not winning.
Yes.
Especially when you feel like, do you know what? This month has been hard. I got nothing. Those are the times when you actually need to go back and either add things that you've done previously or go back and look over that list. No one can take those things away from you. And your career is the most personal and the most valuable investment you will ever make. It belongs to you. There'll be accomplishments you have that you might feel, okay, they don't matter to anyone else. No one else knows what that took, or it's not relevant for the next thing I'm applying for. It matters.
It does matter. It does. And, one of the things, that I would love for us to like delve deeper into is that promotion piece, right? So, I think, there's been a lot of times where I've gone up for promotion or I've shown my ask, and done all the right things and presented all of the data and done, had my 30, 60, 90-day plan and had all the things and painted a picture that I would be the best candidate for this promotion. And I get a no. And so how would we, what's one way that you can give our listeners and our viewers some tips on how to push past that, that no, like, we're celebrating the win that yes, we went for it. We might put that in.
We did all the things and we actually asked, which is courageous in itself.
Yes.
And, it is so hard to have objectivity about that in the moment because it matters. And as I said, it takes courage to ask. And then if you hear something that doesn't align with the next step you want to take, it can be really hard. So this is my advice for anyone watching or listening. Before you go into a conversation where you are making that ask, think through the three possible outcomes that there could be. There's the first, which is that you hear the encouragement of, oh my gosh, yes, we'd love to talk about moving on to X, Y, or Z. Then there's a non-committal where it's kind of like, I can't make any promises right now, or language along those lines. And then there's a third option, which is a pretty more direct no, either you're not ready or there is not the opportunity now. It could be either of those strands. So think through in advance for those latter two, how you would respond. And I think the first thing is to always take a breath, but then show some appreciation. So first of all, say, I'd really value your insights and perspectives. And, you and I are coaches, so we know the power in open-ended questions. What you actually want to do is to start asking some open-ended questions that can start to have some conversation and insights that could be helpful. And an example could be, could you tell me more about what the promotion process looks like? Assuming if you don't already know that, it could be that your organization already has, a process that, it could be, or could you give me a perspective on something that I should do as a next step? Or could you give me some context on some of the business decisions that might impact this decision? Because there could be multiple things happening. It might be the case that actually there is a promotion, there's the opportunity and people are being considered for it, in which case the business case has already been established and it's a case of who is the person for the opportunity. There might be other times where the business case might be a little bit more uncertain. There could be times when there's decision makers that are, in addition to the person that you are talking to, that also have a say. There could be so many things. You yourself know the environment that you operate within, but there might be additional components that you need to hear that are factors. And even if the person you're asking isn't able to share or ready to share in that moment, you could ask questions like, when could be a good time to revisit this conversation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think these all encapsulate into what I like to talk about, no being a next opportunity.
Yes.
It's not like a hard and fast, no, never, ever, but let's
Yes.
talk about the possibilities of what can be done. Is there anything else I need to do? What are the steps? Help me understand. It's coming from that place, like you said, the golden thread of what's driven you in your career is that place of curiosity.
Place of curiosity, and
Love that.
also giving yourself perspective to understand the macro and the micro environment. And depending on what you hear and depending on what your macro and micro environment is in your ask, there could be a number of factors that are at play. There could be things you cannot control, such as, I don't know, what's happening in terms of your organization and their fiscal year planning and revenue and mergers, acquisitions, org changes, customer changes. There could be all sorts of things. But then there also could be perhaps personalities. There could be, do you have advocates that are aligned with what your next steps could be? Do you have people who are championing your work? There could be a lot of different factors that could contribute to what your next step looks like, but giving space for that curiosity, but then internally making the commitment that you will continue to raise the bar higher.
Yes. That part. That part.
Make that your commitment. Your manager, your team, the decision makers will be in your orbit for this moment in time, but your career is yours to define. So make that commitment to yourself that you will continue to raise the bar higher as you hear the no, which is a next opportunity,
Yes.
but continue to hold that promise to yourself.
And I think that says so much about leadership in general, right? Like it's not always about the wins, it's how you show up after the losses, right? And that shows such strong character and resilience in learning from that. So it's just like, okay, I
Yes.
hear you. I hear what you're saying, but I'm challenging myself to not give up. I'm not letting this go.
Yes. And don't be afraid to keep asking. Like sometimes, I mean, it all depends on everyone's circumstance going into the ask in the first place. It could be that it's been a long time coming. It could be the seeds have already been planted. But often promotions can require patience until all of a sudden all of the stars align in terms of the business case and actually what's happening within an organization, as well as the individual that has the potential. And so being prepared to plant the seeds, not just for where you are right now, but just for yourself in general, and knowing that the things that are worth having are worth working towards and building towards.
And like how would somebody stay on task with that? Like,
Yeah, because
like
it is hard.
it's hard to do that. So like, how do they keep themselves motivated? Like,
especially when you perhaps feel you might have been passed over by somebody else, and you can see
that they are not like they're the mediocre choice.
Yeah, if it's right in front of you. I mean, it's one thing to hear a no and no one's getting promoted, but it's another thing if you hear a no and you see someone else moving into the position that you wanted. It's really, really hard. You have to remember, though, it's not a race. And you have to remember that what I said about continue to raise the bar higher, even if your title's remaining the same, even if your salary is remaining the same, you are not remaining the same. You are constantly growing and evolving. Continue to do your best work, continue to add value, continue to foster relationships, continue to nurture your network, continue to problem solve, continue to do your own performance reviews.
Oh, well, that's a given.
Right? Do your own.
Yes.
Sit down and think about what you're working towards. Make sure where possible to align. Not everyone has their own fairy godmother in their career when they need them the most. Not everyone does, but you might have peers that are alongside you, whether it's at your company or within your industry, who are, like those beacons that you see, and you might sort of see them from a distance. You're like, oh my gosh, there's parts of what they're doing, or sometimes it's the whole thing that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I respect that. I could learn from that. And sometimes you're observing from a distance, but if you can, get up close. Some people are mentors without even knowing they're officially a mentor. You've never actually sat down and said, will you mentor me? But they are,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how they lead, how they show up, questions you might be able to ask. Pour into you.
Yes. Yes. I love all of this. All of these good gems, Octavia. All of them. So yes, these are all fantastic, fantastic tips to share with our audience. I wanted to know a little bit more about any myths that surround the promotion process or rebounding from the pushback, or
Yeah.
any kind of myths that you want to like break.
Yeah, I think there's so many. I think often people assume the results that they track, whether it's in Fire Memos or just themselves and all of the markers that they have, are enough.
Yes.
Often they're not. And it shouldn't be that way, but you have to understand not just the decision-making process, but you also have to really have your eyes wide open as to what success, however you choose to define it, means at the organization you're in, and also what it means for you.
Yes.
And you have to have a very clear perspective on that.
Yeah.
In some organizations, it's very clear in terms of what the baselines are for a promotion, but even within those frameworks, you have to observe and learn about what success looks like once you have crossed that threshold.
Right.
Other organizations, it's a little bit more opaque. You don't know. Other organizations have like silos based on different leaders and their preferences and how they build their teams and their organizations. There can be so much nuance that goes into this. So I think you have to also have emotional intelligence about understanding the landscape that you're in, what success looks like, who are advocates for you, not just to get the promotion, but for you to be able to thrive in that position too.
Excellent. Excellent. So what would be one tip? I know I usually ask for like, this is my favorite thing. What is one career tip that you would share with the younger Octavia?
Know your worth when it's not being reflected back at you, because that's when it matters the most. So whether it's hearing the no about the promotion, asking for the raise or not getting it, applying for the job and not being called to interview, whatever the thing is, know your worth and don't shrink. There was a time when I was working so hard, and I had two bosses who I wasn't completely invisible to, because they would recognize the wins, but they were not invested in my professional development, partly not necessarily for personal reasons. They had too many people to even think about. And they
think about, right.
often senior leaders become senior leaders because they're very good at a set thing. They're very good at revenue generation, or they're very good in a very set area. And often the people management parts that go into being a leader aren't always as strong. And so I felt, oh gosh, is there any point in preparing for performance reviews or any of those things, because the people that I'm talking to are not engaged? And then you start to pull back. Don't do that.
Okay.
Even if you feel, for whatever dynamic you're dealing with, that your manager is not the ideal manager, do not shrink. Do not pull back, and don't assume your work alone just speaks for itself. Continue to show up. Continue to prepare for meetings, even if they get cancelled. Continue to, aggregate all the things that demonstrate your worth, and don't shrink, because when you start to shrink, that creates ripple effects. And what I've found, and I'm sure listeners and viewers have found this too, it's often when you move on to the next thing, you realize your impact, right? That's when people start to say to you, oh, I really enjoyed doing this with you, or I've seen this.
And you're like, what?
Yes. You're like, I wish I'd known that at the time. That's why it goes back to that knowing your worth, even in those in-betweens, because guaranteed, even if you're not hearing it, even if you're not hearing it in meetings or performance reviews, there are people that are observing what you're doing. Yeah. They are observing, and your impact is being felt, even if you feel it's not being recognized. So don't pull back.
I love it. I love it. And it's not to make our audience paranoid that people are watching us, but there are people you are under a spotlight, especially if you're an underrepresented person.
Yeah.
Especially there is a spotlight if you're the only one in the room.
Yes.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
But to not shrink, to not minimize yourself. I love that advice.
Yes. It's so important. And then one more thing I would say is
Yes.
all of these things can be exhausting. It's so hard to consistently do your best work, to show up, have your A game, bounce back from whether it's, negative feedback or just feeling invisible. So find a support circle that's a
Mhm.
safe space for you. Find it could be one person or it could be a small group of people that you can go to, you can talk to, you can be honest with, you can get it out, and then you can regroup.
Oh, there's so much power in community. That was an extra gem, an extra career tip that you dropped there, Octavia. No, there's so much power and there's strength in numbers, they say, and it's so true. And I like the fact that you said people you trust, because
Yes.
there are often times where, we might just kind of glob on to the person that's sitting next to us in our cubicle, or that person may not have our best interests in mind, but the people that truly you trust and that you can confide in.
Yes, that can be so valuable. And it's happened to me even now as a founder. There were other founders that I connect with, and when I'm honest about the things that are hard versus just also talking about the things that's actually where the magic is, because
Mhm.
not necessarily that they can fix the thing themselves, but I might hear a perspective that helps me. I might get an idea that I could run with in a way that applies in my situation.
Mhm.
So having that safe space where you can actually share the hard things as well as celebrating the good things, I think is really important, because as you said, there's a lot of messy middle, and navigating that on our own while also showing up and trying to build and advocate for ourselves is exhausting. So make sure you're taking the best care of you as you do
Yes.
this.
Yes, protect your peace and
Yes.
recharge. Yes, it's so important. And especially like around this time of year, it's just like, oh, do I have any more energy left in the tank? And this is the time where you can really use that group to recharge and restore.
Yes. And if you're feeling depleted, do what you need to do, and then find ways when you're ready to come back again that play to your strengths. Find
Mm.
a component of work that you find that you can do more effortlessly, where
Yes.
you add the value, the things that people will go to you for.
Hmm.
Really play to those strengths as much as there's all the other things we also have to do that go with
Hmm.
our roles. But that can also re-energize you as well, because those are
Hmm.
things that are innately yours that you're good
Hmm.
at,
Hmm.
and you want to hang on to those things.
And that's a good point as well, if you've gotten pushback on that promotion, right? So there have been times where I've gotten the no, or it's not a right fit, or if you lived in California, knew all the law, then that would work. No shade to the person, the hiring manager that didn't hire me for that role, but like there are always something. But that resilience of showing up, like you said, and finding the thing that lights you up to energize you, could look like going back to that hiring manager and saying, I didn't get it this time.
Yes.
However, I'm still very interested in your team, department, organization. Are there any special projects that I could continue to contribute to? I really have a talent for, I don't know, I'm going to say spreadsheets. I'm just going to throw that out there. But put it out there and continue to market yourself, because I found that continuing to offer myself as a support to the hiring manager
Yep.
also shows some visibility, but it also energizes me because I'm still working towards the thing that I wanted.
Exactly. I love, 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 love that perspective. I think it's really, really powerful. And it's not what happened in the moment, whatever that moment is, it's what you do next.
Yes. 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 I wish there was like a bell that I could ring every time there was like a good gem. This thing, the bell would be like, ding, 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 ding.
That is so cool. But yes, it's hard. And I think also we're not machines. We are people. So give yourself time to process
Yes.
feelings that you have. I'll never forget, I was one time working in a global company, it was one of those companies where every year there was a set time when you knew the promotion conversations were being had. And the one person who didn't get it, he could not hide it. And he was furious, right? And so all the emotions came out in a very volatile way. It doesn't mean that you can suppress those easily, but find a way to process any feelings that you have, whether it's anger or upset or frustration. Process it. Don't try and put a lid on it, because it will explode at some point, and your health matters. So find a way to process those things, and then, like I said, raise the bar higher.
Yes. On that note, I'm going to have to wrap it up because I'm seeing the hook. I'm seeing the hook on the timer. And my producer's like, come on, wrap it up. So, but I do so appreciate you being here. Where can we find more of you in your wonderful thought leadership?
Thank you so much for asking. So for anyone reading or listening, if you go to my website, octaviagoredema.com, you can get a first chapter of my book, Prep, Push, Pivot, right there, and start reading it immediately, and also just learn more about my work. And if you use LinkedIn, send me a connection request. Tell me that you listened to the episode. I'd love to know that. So you can always find me on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. And you have a newsletter too,
yes,
right?
Yes. So I have a LinkedIn newsletter, which you can access via LinkedIn. But then also, if you go to my website, you can also get my email newsletter there via my book chapter as well.
Excellent. Octavia Goredema.
Oh, thank you
so much, my friend.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Such a joy to get to talk to you again.
Yes. And we still are due for a catch up offline, because this would go on for like 2 hours. But thank you so much for dropping all of your wisdom, and everyone who's listening, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Career View Mirror. If you got value from this episode, please consider leaving a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or head on over to Spotify and click 5 stars for our show. We also have a YouTube channel with video versions of our episodes, so subscribe over there for more content. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next episode.